love to formally open this meeting of the MCI Concord Legal and Government Affairs Subcommittee. We'll take a roll call vote, which is going to be short. Lee?
Present.
And I am also present, and obviously we're waiting for Mark. I think we're fine doing the minutes though, Lee, unless you had changes.
I do not have changes because I was not at that meeting.
Great.
But I can vote. I can vote for it. I mean,
yes, and I don't have changes, and I was at that meeting. So, does that mean I second it and vote for it? All right.
I move to approve the minutes of what is it, April 23rd, 2024.
Is that right, Shannon? April 23rd. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Great. I second, and all in favor.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Great. I guess we can probably, Mark knows more about this than we all do anyway. So I don't know who was planning on doing the update. Was it you, Shannon? I know you said maybe Megan.
Yeah, Megan has a conflicting meeting today, but I think Mark was going to talk about some of the DCAM updates. But I have some updates from Megan about the earmark for 2026. So it's another $250,000. But at this time, you know, Senator Barrett's office confirms the inclusion of this funding, but flagged a note from the governor's office, which says that funding for local earmarks will be delayed until later this fall as the administration evaluates overall fiscal conditions, including federal budget developments. So there's kind of a little asterisk on that earmark for the time being.
Yeah, so how does that work if it's sitting there, but the governor could say no, ultimately? Yeah. She's the okay.
Can someone remind me kind of how it all shook out with the prior earmark, and is what you just described carrying over FY25 money into 26?
No, this is a new earmark for FY26. For FY25, we spent the entirety of the funds. Alan did a great job with Weston and Sampson and spending the $250,000 earmark. The agency contract was $400,000, so we spent that, and then the board kept the remaining as contingency, which we dipped into a little bit for small things like running ads in the bridge and some town-wide mailings. But then for the rest of that, we were even still able to apply to wastewater work. So all of that was spent, and regardless, we weren't going to be able to carry it over anyway. One of our legislators tried to file the PAC and it didn't go through.
Right.
So yeah, this is a new earmark, and then we also have the $250,000 that was approved at town meeting from free cash.
So that's really what we have today.
That's really what we have right now, but we also have the $100,000 of ARPA funds that was set for the zoning work of the project.
And I believe those funds have to be spent by December 2026.
That's correct.
No.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's a little unclear how much we can reallocate them to something related to zoning.
That's right. Chris will be back soon, but he is our staff person who worked on all of the ARPA. There's sort of like contracts where we had to submit these reports on how the funds were committed to be spent. And so how we had it right now was for the zoning work of this project. But I know Chris has said before that there's a little bit of flexibility in that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. I see Mark.
Hi, sorry to be late.
That's right. We approved minutes while you weren't here, and got a little update on the allocations. And I think that's great because you were going to give us an update on what's going on with DCAM, and
yeah.
So I'll let you jump right into that if you're ready.
Give me the 1 minute, 1 sentence version of the allocations, though. Just so
Yes, so we just talked about how the FY 25 earmarks are wrapped up. Megan's
Yeah,
finalizing the reporting for that, and then there's the FY 26 earmark, but that has a little asterisk on it for now until the governor has a better understanding on what can be fully funded. That's
Right.
gonna be until the fall.
yeah, perfect. Okay. So, DCAM, we had the last coordination meeting that we had was a week ago Friday, I think. And then there was since then, I know Adam Bakke has met with Carrie LaFleur on Monday, and I think Alan Cathcart and Megan, I believe, were part of that meeting as well. Maybe Elisa, as well as Paul and Paul Littlehagen and Abby for that. They, I think we're understanding the tea leaves correctly that there's a lot of pressure from the administration to produce housing projects was one of the takeaways from that. There was, I would characterize it from, and I was not there, so that I'm getting this from what Carrie told me about it. There's also, probably somewhat more of an offer to try to proceed with, from the state to proceed with a master planning process that they would be involved with, or and we would be collaborating in. Maybe
They
from
pay for that, or would we?
excuse me,
Who would pay for that?
they have funding.
Okay.
And my reading from the way it was described to me is that they're a little concerned that we as the advisory board are sort of stuck. And I could see, sitting back a minute from the discussions that we've had, I could see how an observer might think that's the case. That's at least one way of interpreting, our last meeting. So I'm not sure that I would agree with it. I'm just saying that I could see how you could observe that. And those were the main two things. There does seem to be some flexibility around the capital needs for the wastewater treatment facility. In other words, they don't seem to see that as quite as big an obstacle or impediment to development as we do. I'm not quite sure why. I think you guys are probably aware, I forget whether, I think Alan mentioned this in our last meeting, that I think they call it the collector pipe from the Northeast Correctional Facility is in extremely bad condition and requires repair. So that's, obviously one of the main users of the facility today. And the state is apparently moving to repair that. I have no idea what the cost is for that, but I think it's substantial.
So what you're saying is that they are saying they'll pay for a lot of these wastewater repairs? Is that what you mean by they don't see it as a?
I'm not sure they actually put it that directly, but they didn't seem to, I would say they didn't seem to be as concerned that was such a challenge as I think we obviously do.
Mhm.
But is that in the context of just maintaining their own needs for the remaining aspects of the correctional facilities, or does that also include future development?
Yeah, I think that there's a recognition that if the site doesn't have wastewater treatment capacity, then as a development, it's not that viable. I mean, you have to. I think it might have been you that raised the point at our last meeting that I think there's a whole nother avenue that anybody could go down as to whether or not, $25 million obviously buys a lot of on-site wastewater treatment capacity. But of course, a wastewater treatment facility supports more density of both commercial and residential than you know, on premises disposal. So there's, you know, I think a way, you know, an analysis that probably needs to be done based on what the master plan actually looks like. To me, all of this adds up to, I think they still, they're feeling pressure to you know, create a project of some kind, because of the statewide goals for the administrative goals for housing in particular. And but I don't see that, you know, the message that I got was that they're not really abandoning collaboration with us in any way, shape, or form. It's just a matter of trying to say whether maybe stepping out in front and starting to work a master plan might be helpful. And I don't have a read on that exactly. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke with Dan Lee. I don't know if you spoke with Dan too, who filled us in probably on the same thing. I'm a little more cynical about it as usual, where it sounds to me like they want to take it, do whatever, not whatever they want, but they're ready to get moving, and they kind of are like, all right, we'll just take it back over and deal with it. Which I do not know if that's in our best interest, and I don't know honestly the feasibility of it happening the way they want if MassDOT's not on the same time frame as them. Dan said he mentioned land banking, and they really responded badly to that.
Yeah, and then and we are talking about two different meetings. So the coordination meeting was Abby and Paul and Megan and Dan primarily. I just got there for the last couple of minutes of it actually, because I was delayed from something else. And then, you know, a week later, those same people plus Adam and Carrie LaFleur met without Dan or me.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I'm saying that I think that our takeaway from the meeting that I did attend was a little bit more, you know, we might be ready to just take it over. And the tone that I got from the meeting with the town manager was more of a, you know, we're trying to figure out a way to keep the partnership going, and, you know, could this be a helpful avenue? So slight differences in tone, but
yeah.
Can
Go ahead.
Can I just, in this context, I'll just throw out a hypothetical. You set aside, and I'm making these numbers up, 20 acres for open space and recreation. You've got the remaining whatever 60 acres for development. Let's just pretend that we in the state to decide that it will be 100% residential. Okay, that doesn't address the wastewater costs, you know, improvement in wastewater to capture that. It doesn't include anything on transportation, Route 2 or otherwise. It doesn't include anything regarding remediation, which as far as I know, we haven't gotten a single piece of information about. And it doesn't include demolition.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if they're in such a hurry to advance this thing and are seemingly blaming us that we're not moving fast enough. I just find those two concepts completely inconsistent and you know, frankly, disingenuous, if I can be perfectly blunt. And further, you know, for us to pull that 100-page report together, granted, you know, our consultant wrote it, and the amount of time that we had,
yeah,
and they're saying we're not moving fast enough,
right?
That's insulting.
Yeah, and I really don't want to be the person who's, you know, justifying what, you know, what I'm just the messenger here, because you know, my sentiments like a lot closer to yours than
A response is not required.
But what I will say is that, you know, they're sort of saying that this is a statewide initiative and they're trying to do anything.
Fine. Then where's the money to enable that to happen? Are we like what developer is going to go into any project that's in the red by hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Right.
No
So-
offer from the state to cover, as far as I know, any of it.
Yeah, I would also point out too that if they engage with us over the sort of land use working group, puts and takes of, there are other sites that are on that list of sites that are being considered for repurposing that might, to my eye, be available for actual development sooner than MCI, or even sooner than 2229 Main Street. If we sort of had the right agreement in principle, there could be things that happen. So, and Carrie didn't mention that she talked about that, and they seem to get interested in that sort of thing. So I think that being creative, I think that the conversation for this particular group is that, as the legal and government affairs, we need to both be pressing for our advisory board to come up with what our, key interest points are for this property. And then I think we need to be crafting a strategy for how to present that, where to present that, to whom to present it, that really shows that, that's, I still think a win-win-win is possible here. I just think that we need
Should be.
we need to probably,
How about
Particularly-
keep it on the most simple form? How much is it gonna cost to make the site shovel ready?
yeah,
And where is that money coming from?
yeah,
If you don't have the answer to those questions, I think, you don't have a project.
right. Well, and we started down that road in our last meeting, and I didn't get a chance to sit through the land use group's meeting. I think they had one earlier this week, so they were going to talk about this. But we were talking about what are the unknowns that still exist that really kind of need to be answered. And the remediation one is a big one, but there are others that I think we're a lot closer to sizing than some others, and I think phasing is also important. And so my 2 cents is, I think as a board, we need to get into a room and close the doors and talk through our best ideas, and in a format where we can do that quickly and then hopefully come to some kind of consensus, and if not come to consensus, come to a real approach to resolve those, what differences we may have, and do that. I think if we do that as a board, we'll serve ourselves well in whatever negotiations come next.
I think those are great points. Mark, your point about all of the other land we have to reuse is a great point. It all points to me to the idea that that we should put the brakes on a little bit here. I don't see, we go into rezone, then I just don't see the advantage to doing that right now. I actually think we're at an advantage to not having it rezoned at the moment, because the state says they're going to take it back over. They can't, according to their, we can't do anything without the zoning. And I don't see anything that anyone's saying that says that it's in our interest to move right this second to put them in a position to be able to go out to a developer.
Yeah.
And if that changed, we could have a special town meeting in less than a month.
Correct.
Right. I think
Correct.
I actually think that there's something to be said for the notion of handling this zoning as a special town meeting, like put it
Oh,
on.
I agree with that.
I do too. I do
Be a
too.
dedicated map.
Yeah.
But I also think there's something to say that leaving it as industrial right now. And I mean, you really think the state's going to come in and do something on an industrial? Who was it? Dan was saying, was it you, Lee, who mentioned putting it in agricultural?
No.
Someone said, just to take it off the table for the moment. I have always been skeptical of this. The state's out for this. I know that we're working together, but we also know the state's out for the goals that they said they're out for. We know
Yeah.
that the governor's up for re-election next year. We know that all this stuff has nothing to do with us necessarily. I totally agree with you, Mark. I think we need to figure out what our ultimate strategy is. And I think obviously our ultimate strategy is getting the best use of that land. And I would say it's not in our best interest to say, yeah, you guys take over the master planning and we'll zone it to accommodate that, or even that we're ready to say what the zoning is gonna be, because I just don't think we are.
Mm.
All that's well and good, but if you
Yes.
don't have a source of funds to do what it takes to make it shovel ready, then, you know, we're kind of negotiating against ourselves. And have they offered a
Wouldn't that be the
dollar?
developer though? I mean,
What?
isn't that the conversation? All we're saying, all they've given us is the ability to say it has to look like this zoning wise, and then they go out to a developer and they make a deal with the developer. And if it works economically, which we see it doesn't right now with any of these scenarios, then they're not gonna get someone to develop it. I think the push on time is, I agree with you, is crazy. They hadn't even communicated with Mass DOT, so to blame us, and I mean, it's not going to happen by re-election time. It's so, you know, I just kind
Well,
of think, you know,
I
In
mean,
fact, I would push it in the direction of, if we stay more or less on the course that we're on, which is trying to develop something that has community support, what is likely to happen by
Mhm.
by mid next year is an agreement in principle as to what's going to happen. And
Yeah.
I think that the alternative, which is there's a fight going on about what's going to happen, is exactly how you end up with, you know, these other properties around the state that are going on decades without resolution, because that's not where we want to be. I think we want to be.
and yeah, and what
I
other
don't-
community in the state has accomplished as much as we have in the amount of time that we have?
I just think we, you know, if we, I think we're still in a position. So I agree in some sense, pump the brakes for, but also go faster again in sort of the direction that we're going, and try and prove that the idea, the, you know, the plan that we can come up with is sort of the best plan. Recognizing, of course, that there are some unknowns about, you know, particularly the remediation costs that, you know, until the state makes a commitment to figure out what those are, they're always going to be a big, you know, caution sign over any plan that anybody puts forward. I honestly believe that.
Mhm. Did you guys get Linda's memo about next steps? She had sent two memos, and one was kind of outlining what next steps should be. And I mean, I agree with you. I'm not saying drag our feet on purpose, but I think we're going as fast as we can go. And Linda, you know, there's this kind of getting further into defining what we mean by these kind of mission-based, or what, you know, the civic use. I mean, really, we need to start looking at these closer. And so I don't think we're slowing down on purpose, but I don't think we should speed up to
Right.
meet their arbitrary schedule that really makes no sense.
Can we wrap that into their suggested master planning process?
That we come up with those, or that
Well,
they,
as if it's accurate that the master planning process will be a collaborative effort, we can, I mean, if I was the hired master planner, the first thing I would do is read the agency report.
Yeah.
well, interestingly, so I really did not like something that happened with this agency report process, which is that DCAM was talking directly to agency without us. And I thought that was kind of inappropriate. So it's, you know, pushing back on agency about things they wanted to see happen. If they're going to be involved in this master, if it's going to be their master planning, I think we're at odds. I mean, I think we are. So I don't know. And it doesn't sound like that's what they're saying, Mark. They're saying that they would take it over completely, right? They wouldn't collaborate with us.
Well, they're not, they're saying they'd like to collaborate. So we've had two different reads on that. One was, you know, I'd say the second one was probably more authoritative than the first, which is that the sort of, would it be helpful if we started down that road and tried to collaborate with the town over it, as opposed to waiting for the town to come up with it. I think that what we need to do is just figure out our own plan phasing, and then signal that this is what, you know, I think if we come up with what makes sense to us, I don't see that as being any slower than anything anybody else could come up with. I think.
You
we
say
probably-
plan phasing, you mean for what we want to see or how we want the master planning to take
Both.
course? Okay.
Yeah, I think how we want the planning to take place and an idea of what we want to see. I think we're on the fastest path, whether anybody thinks they're, regardless of what.
Like, let's pretend we gave them on a platter, this is what we're recommending, and they like the idea. That does nothing to fix Route 2,
Right.
the rotary. How long
Right.
is that going to take? 5 to 10 years.
It's
So
5 years, just design phase is what they said. They have 5 years in the budget for design. I know, Mark, you said it could maybe go a little faster, but that's what I heard. Is that
All right,
Well,
call it 3.
yeah, or right.
I mean, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And then they don't necessarily have the funds to actually do anything once they have design.
And it seemed that I'm aware of to be in any rush to accelerate that process.
Right.
What I'm looking for really is, the last Mass DOT, meeting that and I am pleased that they're sharing their work progress, had sort of, identified what their preferred idea about where Route 2 lies, but
Mhm.
it had a single line going across, bisecting that sort of said, this is roughly where we're thinking about putting Commonwealth Avenue, which was sort of a diagonal across the existing prison parking lot and sort of rerouted to the west a little bit. But what they said about that was, by the time we sit down again, which would be in 3 to 4 months, we think we'll have a concept of what that looks like. And certainly once you've got a design concept for that, then it becomes a whole lot easier for us to plan around that and see what, because all of a sudden, actually the MCI property up near Route 2 gets a little bit bigger, gets a little wider, because, now you've rerouted the main road away. And I see that as something we could work with. Certainly if agency had that when they were doing their work, they would have come up with, different looking designs than the ones that are even in that report, because they just assume Commonwealth Avenue laid out where it is.
Right. Which, again, they're not communicating with each other. I mean, DCAM's communicating with agency, but MassDOT's clearly not communicating with DCAM.
Well,
I mean, I
is
guess
probably
as
the
a-
hardest thing to move.
Right. I mean, I don't, 3 to 4 months, I don't know, Mark, if they'll.
Yeah, well, that's what they said. It was, we're working on where, what our concept for Commonwealth Avenue is, and that was the next iteration that they were expecting.
The interesting part about that, Lee, I don't know, since you weren't at that meeting, I think, was they're really not interested. I mean, they listened to what we had to say, but they have what they want to accomplish. And they also said something interesting, which was, people from Concord aren't the biggest users of Route 2. They were like, we're talking to Acton, we're talking, so
That's kind of irrelevant. Like, we're talking about changing the traffic circulation, not only for the improvement of the whole, but to enable the project within those walls to work.
I got from that was the secondary. I mean, they have to deal with the bridge over the river. Mark, you can talk about, the structurally how that works with the grading, and it's to me, they're on a path that they'll give a little bit of, well, we put up this kind of like contra alley, this little road up against the site so that people can get into it. But I didn't get the sense that they were going to be that swayed by what we wanted to have happen. Maybe you heard differently, Mark, but which gets me to my point, which is, to me, this is all a political conversation. And as legal and government affairs, I mean, we're just not privy to all these conversations that are happening. And I don't know how much we can be and how much transparency there is going to be. I mean, there's obviously more conversations going on. Mark, you're involved in some of them, but none of us are involved in some of them. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's another conversation with Simon, if he knows even how much is going on.
Well, my feeling is that the sooner that we as the advisory board decide what we want those conversations to be about, the easier it is for me as chair of the select board to invite people to come listen to what we really have to say. Like right now, we're still saying, well, we're figuring it out, which is good and right.
Yeah.
And we're working as fast as do that. And I'm comfortable with saying, think what you want, but here's our path to get to an actual opinion that we think the town can work on. And
That makes a lot of sense to me.
uh,
And a lot of that was in the agency report.
mhm.
I
And
think, yeah, go ahead.
this is why I've been encouraging, Dan and Patrick to consider scheduling, some kind of, face-to-face, probably executive session meeting of the advisory board to discuss all of the strategic elements and help us both define and prioritize where we come down on them. Because I think that, it is about strategy. And I think that I already checked with town council and they're fine with this is about land acquisition strategy, and clearly in one of the causes that we can do that. And I think that we need to have that open dialogue amongst the board members, because as I've said right from the beginning, I really want to know what this board really thinks is the best idea. And once I've got that in hand, I'll run with it wherever we have to.
Mm-hmm.
Can I
agree
ask?
with you. Yeah, go ahead, Lee.
I agree as well, but were you done?
Yeah.
One piece that I've kind of struggled with since the beginning is obviously the state owns it now. I haven't heard anything about whether the state has any interest in conveying it to the town and let the town do RFP processes, or if the state is going to hold it and they're going to do their own RFP processes and sell it. And, that seems to me like a significant intersection of the direction that we take. Are we just doing all this work so DCAM can decide whether they like it or not and either implement it or ignore it? Or are we teeing this up for a town disposition process? Like, that's never been clear to me.
We've never really gotten into it. I mean, I know I keep
But-
raising it because I think, again, having control of the property is the best thing. And I know that DCAM pushed back on that. I don't think we've explored it enough in depth, how that would work, what it would look like. I mean, the fact that they pushed back against any sort of land bank, I don't know what that conversation was, Mark. Maybe you can explain more about what they didn't like about land banking.
But
Yeah.
they should just tell us what they're thinking today.
Yeah.
We're thinking of conveying it. We're thinking of disposing of it ourselves.
That's my understanding. They're waiting for us to put together the zoning, and then they'll go out to bid and say, this is what they want to see, but the zoning has to have in it a certain amount of what they want, which is housing. And yeah,
Housing.
it's
More
housing, just housing, right?
Let's
So
see.
it's a little, again, I'm gonna use the word disingenuous again, because, oh, we're gonna listen to the town as long as the town is saying exactly what we want to hear, so we can go out for that.
Yeah, and I think that it's pretty clear that the town's position has got to be, housing is good. We like housing in principle, but we also need to be concerned about the town services costs of housing. And if we over-index on housing, what we're really doing is setting the town up for a long-term budget problem, which is going to appear as that housing produces school children, and those school children need facilities and educations, which, frankly, most of us can't live in our houses long enough to offset that cost.
Right. And what I don't like from what I'm starting to hear around the edges here is that they're kind of lining it up to be that we're the problem, and that,
I think we
and then when are they going to say, listen, emergency powers, we need more housing? That's happening. Sorry, go ahead, Lee.
Let me throw this at you. If that, if that's in fact what's happening, they're trying to essentially blame the town for not moving quick enough. We've got Junction Village. Okay, that was literally in the middle of an RFP process, including a literal site tour 3 days before this announcement was made. We could, without any state involvement, develop that site, quote unquote, tomorrow. With, I mean, it has to be housing or open space. So, if they want to play that game, say, all right, we're going to put 200 units right there, and we'll let the rest of the place stay fallow until you figure out
Right.
how are you going to pay to remediate it.
Right, we will
That's-
leave it in industrial.
You know, that's a, you know, I actually think, judging from what I heard about this meeting, that if we decided in our version of, let's call it a master plan, that housing in the Junction Village property is the right way to go, and that can be developed in advance of, or you know, maybe the only modification is that it gets sewered into the state wastewater treatment plant. I think that would actually likely be considered a win, because that would be housing sooner without, you know, I don't see why that, and you know, that might be one of those elements that we could say, all right, if that really fits into our concept for this,
Really their
do
concept.
it. Or, you know, maybe it fits into the concept, but we want to slightly move it in a way that doesn't require any new, you know, any particularly new infrastructure or remediation.
The only slight tweak or hiccup to that is access.
Yeah,
So before
that's what I was thinking.
this,
You know, so we say, okay, we need an easement.
knock down this corner of the wall and,
Yeah.
you know, or wherever you think the ultimate access may be, and use that. And
But will they see-
that can move in the future too.
Yeah,
Will they
We
see it
want to
enough
keep
as
it
a-
off Winthrop Street.
Will they see that enough as a win with housing that they'll kind of back off, to use a better term, of pushing as much on as they possibly can on the other side? Or will they just say, great, now we're gonna do exactly what we were gonna do on what we have remaining here?
No, but this is the kind of brainstorming that I think we need to be doing, because I see, you know, like I said, I think we're thinking faster and more deeply about this site than anybody else, and we might as well take advantage of that and do that.
Yeah. I also think realistically, these conversations aren't gonna be had honestly with the states. Well, they're not gonna tell us honestly about what they're thinking, so.
Yeah.
I agree with you with executive session. What role can we, as Legal and Government Affairs Subcommittee, can we get any further into, I know, Mark, you said you can invite some people once we have more of an idea, but.
Well, I don't have an answer to that question right now, but it's an excellent question, and we should be thinking about it and trying to figure out what we're, you know, what, you know, either avenues of investigation are there, or levers to push, or get prepared to do those levers. It's always a good idea, I think, to maintain our, you know, our lines of communications with our delegations and understand, you know, what's going on at the state. But I think that beyond that, I don't have any.
And I guess another legal question that I've touched on, but I haven't actually explored, is let's say they do decide they don't want to do what we want to do. What power does the governor have to override us in zoning? If there is a housing emergency, or, you know, so maybe that's something we should look into as.
Yeah, I'm not terribly clear on the answer to that question, but
Yeah.
I mean, if they got special legislation, they, you know, can do whatever they want.
I'm wondering whether there's anything they can do without legislation.
Yeah.
I think that
I'll do a little bit of research on that, if anyone else. Yeah.
Government use probably allowed under any circumstance.
But what is government use if they hire contract out to a developer to build housing, but it's under their name? Is that government use?
No.
I don't
Hmm.
know. You guys are the lawyers.
I mean, I'm happy to do a little bit of legal research on it. I just think we need to be strategic. I mean, I've thought this all the way through. Yes, let's try to work together, but this is a chess game also. So, Shannon?
I can follow up with Megan this afternoon too and try to get the exact information, but I thought Megan told me that they did already have some sort of authority to just put housing on the property, like through the housing bond bill or something like that. That they could do like 4 units an acre or something.
Yeah, could you find that out?
Yeah, like Megan, I think, said it wouldn't be as much as they would want to really have on a property, or what they think that they could ideally do at the property, but I think that there was something already included in the.
There's also the MBTA zoning overlay. I don't think
Yeah.
it goes all the way to Route 2, but I think
Well, it doesn't, that, the MCI property is not included in that district according to what we did. Because we weren't allowed to include any state property.
right.
So, you know, that particular, but that is an interesting question.
Yeah,
I
because they could
think though,
transfer it.
Even if they have, even if there is some authority, though, it doesn't sidestep the fact that the site still needs $100 million worth of work.
Elizabeth, just
True.
going back to your big picture question, like what do we do next as a subcommittee?
Yeah,
Personally, just given what's transpired, since the report was issued and these little smaller meetings, I think we should have an executive session of the full committee and just collect everyone's various thoughts and then use that input to decide what our and the other subcommittees' next roles should be, and just kind of, then fan
I
out,
think it's a great
Start.
idea.
start a action plan.
Yeah, I think
But
that's
we're-
great.
We're kind of in a silo right now.
So
Well,
maybe after this, we reach out to Dan and say we would like to request that we schedule that meeting sooner rather than later. Mark, I'm sure you've already said that, but
Yeah, I am, and there's even some thought about trying to do some of that in the August 4th meeting. I was just going to add too that as soon as that has happened, I'm more than happy to schedule something for the select board to meet with and receive whatever information there is, because I think it does make sense for the select board to understand what we're thinking strategically.
Which should probably also be an executive session.
Yes, yeah, that's what I meant.
okay. All right, well, that's a good, I agree with you, Lee. We all need to figure out, but it's
Everyone's
getting
got their own
interesting.
perspective, so let's hear what they
Oh,
are.
right,
It's
and
true.
I'm quite sure that I'd be very interested to hear them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
then try to figure out how to make one of them work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right, so why don't we leave it? I still would be interested, Shannon, if you could get us that information about what can be done by right, and then I would be interested in knowing how the state could override local zoning if they wanted to. I'll put together. I have a husband who teaches legal research at Northeastern Law School, so he has got some good research connections. So maybe I can get something put together on that. And
Student intern project.
I never have the interns do projects for you, Mark. What are you talking about?
Or you could
Unfortunately,
have
you just had
town-
to fire his interns because of budget stuff, but he's got access to some databases. I know, Lee, you do too, but so
town council can give you the answer to that in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
well, I would be happy to have town council do it if we can, but do we have to ask the town manager to ask
Yeah, but
council?
I wouldn't be surprised if there's not already an opinion written on it.
Yeah, so Shannon, if you wanna,
I can ask Megan.
Yeah.
okay, yeah, that'd be great. And then just, I'll just follow up with Dan and say what we've just said, even though he already
Okay.
knows that you've already said that. Anything else?
Not for me.
Okay. Well, great. Anything from the public or whoever's on here? Eric Moore.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Eric
Hi.
Moore. Yeah, thank you. Oh, it was a really interesting meeting. Thank you. I'm really, having not attended one of these meetings before, I'm really like, yeah, good. You're talking about the right things.
Good.
So thank
I
you.
think you have to say your
Yeah.
address for the record, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, 45 Francis Street
Great.
in West Concord. Eric Moore again. So a few things, just a few quick comments. I mean, one, you really are talking about a negotiation. I support, as you've discussed, the idea of an executive meeting and what's the word? An executive session. I'm sorry. I'll just and again, you guys know this terrain much better than I, but I think to talk about individual positions around what we want to have happen, and then the negotiating position with DCAM. I think if you were to make a decision about the group's decision about what we want, I think that wouldn't necessarily fit an executive session. You know what I mean? You know what I mean. I think just from a negotiation perspective, the question came up: what progress does DCAM need to show for the governor's interest? And it's not super clear other than housing. what their timeline is or what kind of housing they're looking for. A different perspective is what progress, and you spoke to this, is what progress is DCAM looking for from the MCI committee and from Concord? Again, thinking about the negotiation. I think a big question is just, they want housing, how much housing, of what character? I'm assuming that they would like to see a lot of affordable housing, or near, attainable housing, I think the phrase is. But, I think going back to Lee's point that, and Mark's comment as well, that there's potentially $100 million of liability to work through in terms of demolition and remediation to get to shovel ready. If those costs are passed on to developers, that is, to my view, a huge impact on the kinds of commercial projects they would be doing. And I think, if you want to have affordable, then the state needs to cover the remediation demolition cost. Otherwise, the economics just don't work. And related to, again, to, so DCAM is also depending a bit upon the DOT to put forward a proposal that allows their vision to move forward on sort of the governor's timeline. And so again, what is DCAM looking for from DOT? You spoke to this as well, seems to be salient as well. So those are just my observations. I think I real am, I guess, impressed by the way that you're approaching the work, and I agree with what I've heard. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And at what point do we lose the ability to even have a say in this, because they're just dealing with the developer and all of those, so it's important to keep us involved in those conversations as well. Thanks, Eric.
I'm sorry, I had one other point, which is that, sorry. So if
No.
DCAM were to decide how they want the property to be developed, then still we have this issue. And as you discussed, there may be some override of Concord's ability to zone, but a proposal or a direction coming in from outside Concord would have a lot of political resistance unless they really are able to sort of muscle through the zoning change over the town's consent. So there's a risk that if we get to decide the zoning, that if the proposal doesn't feel like it's the town's initiative, the MCI board's initiative, then there could be political resistance, even if it's a really great idea. All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good points. Anyone else? Okay. This has been great. So we will see each other again on August 4th. Shannon, you'll get us that information, and we will talk about scheduling a meeting after that. I'm going to be away a couple weeks in August, so maybe end of August, unless we need to do something sooner.
Okay.
So great.
Are we at 1 o'clock on August 4th?
I think noon, Lee.
What?
Noon.
Noon.
Okay. Yeah, so just on the executive session idea, I guess the question for the chairs is at that meeting, that's an executive session.
Yeah. We can always do an open session and an executive session.
Yep.
I think that's tentatively the plan right now.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
So
Motion to adjourn.
thank you.
Second.
All right.